Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into a massive disruption today that isn't just going to shake up the automotive industry, it is directly targeting your wallet. If you've been keeping tabs on the electric vehicle space lately, you know it's been a wild roller coaster of huge promises and, frankly, even bigger price tags. But what we're looking at today is an incredibly risky, game-changing pivot by one of the world's oldest automakers. Ford is placing a monumental bet on a brand new truck called the Fathom. And honestly, if they pull this off, it could completely change what you drive, how much you pay for it, and how cars are built from the ground up. Let's get right into it.
$5 billion. Seriously, let the weight of that figure just sink in for a second. This isn't some experimental side project or a flashy concept car meant to look pretty at an auto show. This $5 billion number represents Ford's do-or-die bet on a single vehicle and the entirely new platform it sits on. It is a staggering amount of capital to risk in a market that has been, well, incredibly turbulent lately. For a legacy automaker like Ford, putting $5 billion on the line is the corporate equivalent of pushing literally all your chips to the center of the table.
Section 1. The $5 billion bet. So why is Ford risking so much of its cash right now? Well, it comes down to the harsh, cold reality of the current EV market. It's definitely not the easy money landscape that automakers thought it would be a few years ago. For everyday consumers, for you and me, the EV market has just become incredibly frustrating. The federal tax credit of $7,500 that used to soften the blow of buying an EV, that's been eliminated. And without that cushion, the average electric vehicle today costs a completely unaffordable $56,238. For most families, a $56,000 car simply isn't happening. The industry promised us a revolution, but instead, they kind of just delivered luxury vehicles with luxury price tags.
And look, Ford knows this pain firsthand, right? Because they've lived it. Let's think back to their past struggles with their very first major EV pickup bet, the F-150 Lightning. Remember when that was announced? We were promised this affordable, highly capable work truck starting around $40,000. But the reality? Incredibly different. The price of the Lightning absolutely ballooned, peaking at nearly $60,000. And what happened next? Consumers walked away. It led to super disappointing sales, actually to the point where Ford is ending production of the Lightning entirely in 2025. They learned a very, very expensive lesson. If you don't control the cost, the everyday buyer will simply ignore you.
Section 2. Breaking the price barrier.
Okay, let's dive into this. To solve this massive affordability crisis, Ford went completely back to the drawing board to create a brand new mid-size electric pickup, the Fathom. It is engineered specifically to shatter that price barrier that's kept everyday drivers out of the EV market. Check this out. You have the peak price of the dying F-150 Lightning up near $60,000. You have the average EV sitting at over $56,000. And then you have the Ford Fathom. The standard range battery version has a base price of just $28,350. Even when you add in the mandatory destination and delivery charge, the total out-of-the-door price comes to exactly $29,945, under $30,000 for a brand new electric pickup. Ford is aggressively positioning the Fathom to compete head-to-head not just with domestic rivals, but squarely against those notoriously cheap EV imports from Chinese automakers like BYD.
Now you might be thinking, okay, a sub-$30,000 truck, it's probably basically a glorified golf cart with a tiny bed slapped on the back. Actually, scratch that. It's not tiny at all. The Fathom comfortably seats 5 adults. In fact, it actually has more interior passenger volume than a Toyota RAV4. And on top of that super spacious cabin, you're getting a front trunk, a frunk, and a traditional, fully functional truck bed. It's designed to be a true, practical daily driver for families and workers alike.
Section 3. High-tech, low-cost.
So, naturally, we assume a cheap price tag means a totally bare-bones experience, right? Crank windows, basic radio, the works. But Ford is fiercely challenging that assumption. Every single Fathom, even at that absolute base price, comes tech-rich. You get a large touchscreen. You get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You get a digital car key so your phone is all you need. It even features bi-directional power capability, meaning your truck can literally act as a mobile power source. But here is the absolute kicker. Every single Fathom comes standard with the hardware for Ford's next-generation Blue Cruise hands-free highway driving system. That is premium, cutting-edge tech packed straight into a budget-friendly vehicle. No way around it. That's impressive.
Section 4. The assembly tree revolution.
All of this begs a pretty crucial question. How on earth is Ford managing to build a high-tech, incredibly spacious truck packed with premium features for under $30,000? How do they actually make the math work? Well, to solve the cost problem, they realized they couldn't operate inside their usual corporate system. Instead, they set up a highly dedicated skunkworks team out in California.
This team worked completely outside of Ford's traditional engineering bureaucracy. They were given a totally blank slate and one singular mission: rethink everything. The result of that freedom? The all-new Universal Electric Vehicle Platform, or UEV. The Fathom is the very first vehicle built on this entirely new foundation.
But as you can guess, just having a new platform wasn't enough. They had to invent a brand new way to physically build the truck. And here is their secret sauce: the assembly tree. Instead of Henry Ford's traditional single-moving assembly line that's been the absolute industry standard for a century, they are implementing a completely revolutionary manufacturing process. The assembly tree uses 3 separate, parallel lines that run simultaneously and only merge at the very end of the factory floor.
And this brilliantly illustrates why this is such a big deal. On a traditional single line, if one station takes way too long, boom, the entire factory stops. In EV manufacturing, installing that heavy, highly complex battery is almost always a massive bottleneck. But with the parallel assembly tree process, the battery installation happens on its own dedicated branch. It doesn't slow down the assembly of the interior or the chassis. They all just come together perfectly at the very end. This efficiency is exactly how they are aggressively driving down those manufacturing costs.
Section 5. Will the gamble pay off? So they have the price, they have the tech, and they have a revolutionary new way to build it. But looking at the massive business stakes here, the contrast is incredibly stark. Typically, developing a brand new car from scratch costs an automaker roughly $2 billion. But as we established at the beginning of this explainer, the Fathom and its UEV platform have already cost Ford around $5 billion. That is a gargantuan leap in investment. If the Fathom fails to connect with buyers, like the Lightning did, it wouldn't just be a disappointment. It would be an absolute unmitigated disaster that could legitimately threaten the future of this legacy automaker.
Because here's the reality. The profit margins on a sub-$30,000 truck are razor thin. It is priced similarly to Ford's gas-powered Maverick, which means to make that $5 billion back and to actually turn a profit, Ford absolutely must sell the Fathom in massive, unprecedented volumes. They need this truck to be quite literally everywhere. They aren't looking for some small niche audience. They need this to be the new default vehicle for millions of Americans.
So, if you're already calculating your trade-in value and thinking, yeah, I want one, here's the timeline you need to know. Pre-orders for the Ford Fathom are officially slated to open in early 2027. And if all goes according to this highly ambitious plan, customer deliveries are expected to hit driveways in the second half of 2027. We are just a few short years away from seeing if this grand experiment actually works on the road.
Which really leaves us with the ultimate question as we wrap up this explainer. With the total elimination of those tax credits and the failure of the Lightning sitting right there in the rearview mirror, Ford is going all in. Will this California-designed, assembly tree-built, high-tech Fathom finally spark the affordable EV revolution we've all been waiting for? Or will it go down in history as the automotive industry's $5 billion cautionary tale? Time is going to tell for sure, but one thing is absolutely certain: the entire industry is watching closely. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and keep your eyes on the road ahead.